several European countries are sending troops to Greenland in a show of support for Denmark as it tries to persuade President Trump not to take over the island.
Paris just sent a fleet of nuclear-powered ships into Greenland's backyard, and even the United States Navy did not see it coming. This move is a total game-changer that has Moscow rethinking every plan they had for the North Pole. Most people think of France as just another European power, but they just proved they can stand up to the biggest navy on Earth.
France and Norway confirming that they will also deploy military personnel to Greenland as part of what they're calling a reconnaissance mission.
I am not going to lie, the details of this standoff are hands down the most intense thing to happen in the Atlantic in decades. Watch until the end to see the twist that flips the entire board. Greenland Fleet Shadows. At exactly 0800 hours local time, the morning silence over the North Atlantic was shredded by the thunder of 75,000 tons of nuclear-powered steel. The French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle had just reached the edge of Greenland's coastal waters without any prior warning to its American allies. This move was a physical show of the power that has redefined modern warfare in the 21st century. To military experts, the arrival of this fleet was like a sudden storm on a clear day. France did not do this because they wanted a small fight. They did it to force the United States to realize that the Arctic is no longer a one-country playground. Each French ship represents a floating city equipped with the most advanced radar systems in the world. These ships are protected by a digital brain that links every destroyer into a single lethal machine. France was essentially checking every square inch of the Greenland coast with sensors that can see through miles of fog and ice. But the Pentagon was not watching in silence. According to secret reports, the United States Navy had already spent years planning for a challenge in the north, though they never expected it from Paris. Hidden within the deep fjords and cold mists, the French were readying an all-in response. This was a massive wave of high-speed ships and Rafale jets carrying advanced gear. They believed that in the narrow and icy paths around Greenland, their technology would give them the win. They were banking on the idea that if you move fast enough, even a giant can be caught off guard. The line had been drawn in the ice. The world's future shipping lanes were at the mercy of a hair trigger. The board was set and the fuses were lit for a gamble that would change the rules of the ocean forever. The French fleet moved through the choppy waves with a silent speed that made them look like ghosts on the horizon. Arctic Shield Breakdown. At 1410 local time, the French fleet increased its speed to 30 knots, pushing deeper into the disputed zone. This move redefined what it means to take a risk at sea. Scores of fast attack craft ignited their engines at the same time, screaming across the water in a giant wave of steel. From above, two groups of Rafale jets dropped to a height of just 60 feet. They were literally skimming the tops of the waves to stay under the radar of the American destroyers nearby. Paris was making a huge bet. They believed that by showing a mix of high-tech ships and fast jets, they could confuse the American computers and find a way through the defense. It was a bold attempt to outsmart a digital giant. But the United States Navy did not take the bait. Instead of making noise, the American fleet went totally dark. In a heartbeat, the USS Gerald R. Ford and its escort ships vanished from the digital world. They turned off every radio and every radar system. This turned the world's largest warships into phantoms in the cold air. At the same time, the American strike group put out a huge network of decoy ships. These are not just empty boats. They are smart digital tricks that send out a perfect copy of an aircraft carrier's heat and signal. To people watching, it was like a game of hide and seek in a room full of mirrors. The French commanders were busy ordering their pilots to chase spots on their screens that were nothing but digital lies. They thought they were getting close to a big win against the American fleet. They did not know the real American ships were standing right next to them, silent and invisible. The hunters were busy chasing shadows while the real predator was already counting down the seconds to the end. Moscow's experts watched their screens with open mouths as the French move caused the American sensors to go completely haywire. Moscow shockwaves. Russia's top military minds sat in a state of total confusion as they watched the radar screens in the Kremlin. Their plans for the Arctic had always assumed that NATO would work as one single unit. Seeing France move against the United States was like watching two brothers start a fight in the middle of a war. Putin's advisors realized that their own plans for the North Pole were now in danger because the rules of the game had changed overnight. If France could challenge the Americans, then the entire balance of power in the world was shifting. The Russian Navy quickly sent its own nuclear subs toward the area to see what was happening. They wanted to know if the American shield was truly broken or if this was all a giant trick. Russian technical teams watched as their silver bullet tracking systems failed to keep up with the French signals. The hunters in the Kremlin had been tricked into thinking they knew how the Atlantic worked. It was a billion-dollar wake-up call for Russia's own Arctic program. While the cold sky was filled with jets, the surface of the sea became a testing ground for a new kind of power. Moscow realized they were not just watching a drill. They were watching a new digital god of war being born. This new power did not need to use bullets to win. It used code and light to erase the enemy's ability to even see the battlefield. Russia thought they were the masters of the North, but they were actually just watching from the sidelines. The shock of the French move was putting it lightly, as it proved that no one's spot at the top was safe. The Russian leaders wondered if they should step in or simply wait for the two giants to tire each other out in the freezing wind. Frozen tech trap. As the French jets entered their final path, expecting to find the American carrier, the electronic warfare planes in the sky sent a digital punch that changed everything. This was not just blocking signals, it was a total digital takeover. Using new pods, the American planes did not just drown out the French signals, they rewrote them. Suddenly, the screens on the French jets were showing a new set of data. The real target was not the American ship anymore. It was their own base back in Europe. French technicians watched in fear as their own planes seemed to lose their way in the digital fog. The hunters had just been tricked into looking the wrong way. It was a very expensive lesson for the French Navy. While the sky was a mess of signals, the water around Greenland became a place for a silent monster. The laser systems on the American destroyers came to life. In high-stakes sea fights, we usually expect loud guns or big missiles. But this was different. There were no loud booms and no smoke. At a distance of 5 miles, the lead French scout boats simply stopped moving. One by one, their engines began to glow a bright red before turning into a pile of useless metal. To an observer, it was as if the heat of the sun had touched each boat. It was clean and very fast. The French move was being taken apart by a beam of light that cost less than a burger to fire. This turned $1 billion of French gear into a floating pile of junk. Paris thought they were in a long fight. They did not realize they were fighting a system that does not even need to fire a shot to win. The commanders in the French fleet began to realize that their high-tech gamble had led them right into a trap made of light and shadow. Northern Power Shift. At 14:45 local time, the most scary part of the American defense was turned on. This was the digital hive mind. While the French leaders were shouting into their radios, trying to find out why their boats were melting, an American stealth jet was flying 6 miles high in the mist. The pilot did not fire a single missile because he did not have to. Using his radar, he simply pointed out the French command ships and shared that data with the entire network. 120 miles away, an American attack sub hiding hundreds of feet below the ice got the data. Without ever coming up or showing where it was, the sub launched a set of smart torpedoes. The French leaders were marked for deletion without ever knowing who did it. They were not fighting a ship, they were fighting a cloud-based math problem that had already decided they were gone. This is the ultimate way to win a modern sea battle. The hunter is invisible and the win is certain. Then at 1500 hours, as the French tried to restart their radars to find the American ships, they found the real horror. The American agents had not just watched their systems, they had lived inside them for months. This was the master stroke of the shadow code. Every bit of code France used to build its network had a secret back door. Every time the French turned on their sensors, they were not seeing the real ocean. They were seeing a recorded video loop made in Washington. The United States Navy had not just blocked the move, they had borrowed the entire French network and forced it to stop itself. France thought they were the masters of the Arctic, but they were actually just actors in an American show. The current situation in Greenland brings up a very frightening question. We must ask if simple, brave acts by people still matter in a world that is mostly run by computers. In the past, wars were fought by soldiers who used their hearts and their strength to win. Today, we see a new kind of struggle. On one side, there are people with ships and courage. On the other side, there is code and pulses of light. When this happens, the old idea of a normal battle disappears. This is no longer just a fight between sailors on the ocean. Instead, it is the planned destruction of a whole system. This change creates a very difficult puzzle for our modern world. In the 21st century, the most damaging wars will likely be the ones that stay completely silent. In these fights, there is no sound of gunfire and no big clouds of smoke to see. Instead, an entire nation can be frozen in place by just a few lines of computer code. The United States fleet did not move into these waters to start a traditional war. They came to prove a point. The cost of trying to take over another land is now instant and total loss. In a world that runs on digital power, the person who holds the master key to the networks is the king of the sea. Today, that king wears the uniform of the United States Navy. If this move in Greenland actually happened, it would cause a massive crisis for the world's energy. Greenland and the Arctic area hold a huge amount of the oil and gas that the world needs to function. Even a very short fight in this region could cause the price of gas at the pump to jump by 50% or even more in a few days. This would hurt every family and every business. But there is an even darker side to this power. What if a real missile actually got through the defensive shield? In less than 3 minutes, a massive response would begin from a silent submarine hiding deep in the ocean. These missiles are not just standard weapons. They are the end of the story. Before an enemy could even celebrate a small win, every command center in their country would be destroyed. If the fight lasted for just one full day, the Americans would simply turn off the entire power grid of the other side. They would not just attack ships, they would turn off the lights, the heat, and the machines that keep a civilization alive. We are moving into an era where winning a war means making an entire society stop working with the push of a button. Do you think France will try to make this move again, or will they stay in line with the Americans now? Hit that like button if you think the American technology is too strong to beat. Let us know in the comments by typing "total dominance" to show your support. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a mission. The board is set, the eyes are watching, and we will see you on the next deck. Go Navy!